Hey, this is Dominic, and this is your home for the cutting-edge conversations on optimizing your personal performance, lighting up your sex life, and living a purpose-driven life of your own design.
These are the topics that Dominic and I have both struggled with in our own lives and still don't always get right. This is Brian. Welcome to the Great Man Podcast.
Wow, fellas, we've had over 250 men register for the 100 Great Push-Up Challenge in the first 5 days of this challenge going live. We've been blown away by the enthusiasm and the receptivity of all of you guys signing up for this challenge. People are starting to join teams and get really excited about this 60-day journey of learning how to do 100 consecutive push-ups in a row by harnessing your mind, your body, the tools and resources we talk about on the show all the time of meditation and breath work and not lone wolfing, being in small accountability groups to do what is seemingly impossible for most of us, which is to do 100 consecutive push-ups in a row. This is our free challenge that starts January 1st, goes for 60 days to March 1st. The link is in the show notes. And our goal is to get 500 dedicated men to start and finish this challenge. Your goal is to do 100 consecutive push-ups. The goal for humanity is to raise $1 million for mental health charities. You can participate in that or not, but we do want you to get involved in the challenge, to join one of our small group teams, to shatter your perceived limits about what's possible for you. The link is in the show notes. Join us. It's going to be one hell of a journey starting on January 1st. We are on week number 12 of the Building Your Best Self series. This is our next to last episode in this 13-week adventure that you've been on with us since the beginning of October to help you finish 2021 strong and to kickstart 2022 as the best version of yourself, your great man. Now, our conversation today is about how to design the next year of your life, 2022. This has become an annual tradition that Brian and I bring to you on the show every single year of looking forward and becoming very intentional about the year that you want to have ahead. Our number one enemy in life to living a powerful life is drift. And the antidote to drift is intentionality. So today's discussion about how to design the next year of your life is a very intentional conversation about how to pick one really important thing that you are going to commit to, one bold move that will create a splash in your life to take you from the current level that you are operating at to that next level in your life that is most important to you. Now, I'm sharing with you my secrets. It's basically a very simple 3-step process that I stumbled upon about a decade ago on how to move from a current level that I was operating in, whether it was in income in my life or my romantic relationships, my intimacy, my physical well-being, my mental health, to take that step, that big leap from the current place I'm at to that next level by making a bold move. And you'll hear me talk about some of these bold moves that I committed to in a few minutes here. Next year, I'm going to write a book and I'm going to publish my first book. Or next year, I'm going to write a TED Talk and then publish that TED Talk. I'm going to leave a corporate career and I'm going to go on a 90-day sabbatical around the world. Picking one bold move instead of a boring New Year's resolution, one bold move that by hell or by high water, I'm going to make sure happens. And when I do, I feel a sense of accomplishment and success. But not only that, when I stack them up year over year over year, the trajectory of my life takes off, living one heck of an adventurous, fulfilling, and meaningful life in the process. You get to go through this 3-step process today of identifying your next level that you want to aspire to and then picking a bold move that catapults you from where you currently are to that place. So buckle up and enjoy the ride on our conversation today, how to design the next year of your life. Sunday, December 12th marks a big day for New York City, bud. Why don't you let the listeners know why New York City is in store for such a big surprise?
I'm back, baby. So Beck and I got a apartment in the West Village. And so we will have a home base both in New York City and what we like to call the country house in Philadelphia. So we're splitting some time.
In the city of Philadelphia, man.
That's exactly it.
So you're heading into the West Village, man. You're going to be like a neighbor now.
I know. I'm very excited. My first apartment ever in New York City was about 3 blocks from where we're moving. I love that area. And I love Brooklyn. Brooklyn was a great spot too. But there is nothing like being in Manhattan. It's a totally different animal. And my ass is going to be looking real good in a few months because we got a 5-story walk up. And right. Dominic has offered so generously. And now I didn't tell Dominic that it's a 5-story walk up, but I did ask him to help with moving some things. So now he knows.
Yeah, you actually broke that news in our men's group last week. So when you asked me earlier, I knew. But brother, I live on the 5th floor of my apartment. There's an elevator in this building. I take the stairs every day.
Do you really?
So here's a fun fact. Some of our listeners may know the name Scott Galloway. He's considered to be a branding expert. He's pretty big on Twitter. He was my NYU professor over a decade ago teaching brand strategy. And he was my favorite professor in the 3 years that I was there. And he did this thing on the first day of class. He was just like, he goes, listen, out in the real world, things aren't fair. He's like, in my classroom, things will not be fair either. He goes, I may grade you based on how I like you or not. Based on like how you look, the food you eat. Like, this is how he would teach us. He's like, if I see you walking in here with a soft drink, I automatically will dock you grade points. He's like, we're on the 2nd or 3rd floor in this building. He goes, if I see you taking the elevator to my class, I will give you a lower grade. Like walk up the 2 freaking flights of stairs and get some exercise. Like that's like how he teaches. And I remember taking 3 stories of walking. I was like, yeah, why? I guess I just out of laziness or unconscious, whatever. I used to take the elevator. So 12 years ago, I started taking the stairs and I just haven't stopped since.
So the key to your physique and health is not doing 100 push-ups at a time. It's all about taking the stairs. I get it. Now we all have the secret. We have no excuses.
Yeah, I guess I blew my secret, but now it's all available to you. Take the 5-story walk up.
And if you live on the 1st story or the 2nd story, then just take the stairs up and down a bunch of different times. Your neighbors will think you're not weird. It's fun.
So we had a guest, Ben Aldridge, I think a couple years ago, he came on the show and did like 43 weird and wacky things to take control of your life. And one of the things that he did was he climbed the equivalent of Mount Everest in his home, which was just going up and down one set of stairs. I think it was like for 20 hours or something like that over the course of a weekend, which mimicked the height and elevation ascent of Mount Everest.
My favorite Ben Aldridge story. So that was a good one. Mount Everest. That's something. He also ran a marathon in his backyard, and his backyard, I think, is 800 square feet. And so he would run back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And my favorite part of the story is not the wildness of what that is, but it was his neighbors were kids. Or he had kids as neighbors, and they were holding up signs in the window like, go, Ben, you're doing great. Keep going. So this guy ran a marathon in his backyard.
Yeah, it's like the equivalent of like running from home to first base, like 2,000 times. Like that's what he did. I'm going to link that episode in the show notes because that was an episode that a lot of our listeners loved. And I guess it's probably by no mistake that we channel Ben Aldridge to open up this next discussion we're going to have around designing the next year of your life and picking a bold move for the year ahead. Because Ben Aldridge picked a series of bold moves in one particular year in his life after he had lived a pretty boring existence, as he would proclaim it. And by making some bold, exciting moves in his life, he revolutionized the way he lived. You can call this, man, this is our 3rd annual installment of Design the Next Year of Your Life. This has become an annual tradition for us.
Yeah, it has. And I remember the very first one. I think you had even prepared a after podcast meditation for people to reflect on their past year, what went well. And what I'm excited about with this podcast is that's evolved. We have some new tools. We have some new ways to think through, well, what is it? What is it that really lights me up? And what is that bold move?
Right on. So yeah, this will be a different flavor than what we've done in the years past. Let's kickstart this conversation with something that I think pretty much everybody knows is that for most of us, New Year's resolutions just simply don't work. They don't work for a variety of reasons. You can go and do all the research and there's a lot of lists that are out there. The 3 biggest reasons why New Year's resolutions don't work are number 1, lack of planning, which we're solving for right now with this episode. Number 2, lack of accountability. You want to do something, you don't have anyone on your side, you keep it to yourself. And then when you decide that maybe I'm not so interested in doing this anymore, You just stop and no one's holding your feet to the fire. So lack of accountability. And the third and final one, and this is the big one that we're really solving for today, is the New Year's resolution often feels like an obligation, right? Obligation comes with a burden. I should go on that diet, or I should be exercising more, or I should be doing something for my business. I should be doing something for my relationships. And yes, while maybe you absolutely should be doing those things, the energy of that always seems to peter out over a period of time.
I remember during the first immersion that you ever ran, and guys were putting together big moves for the year ahead. And something you said is anybody can do that plan for 30 days. And there's excitement. They're telling people about it. But that 90-day mark is where people start to peter out, where people start to lose the energy around it. And so something we're going to talk about today is how do we keep that energy up?
Exactly. What I'll start to share with you is my own personal process, and then we'll go through a 3-step process for how you can pick a bold move for the year 2022 ahead. So I would say it was probably, 11 or 12 years ago when I discovered a little secret. Instead of creating a New Year's resolution at the year end, I decided that I would commit to making one bold move for the year ahead. One bold move that took me outside of my comfort zone, that by hell or by high water, I was committed to making happen, and I was going to see it through. I'll take you back to 2009. Looking forward to the year 2010, I decided that my bold move was going to be signing up for my very first personal development program, which was the Landmark Forum. Now, this was revolutionary for me, man, because like back then, I was really skeptical of the personal development space. I looked at it as these are people who are just trying to manipulate you, take advantage of your weaknesses. When I signed up for Landmark, I went to that forum. All I did the first day I was spent like calculating how much money they're making off of the 300 people in the room. Who are these weird people? Why am I here? So for me, it was like really an edge to sign up for that weekend program, then do the 10-week follow-up course. But by the end of that 10-week experience, a new me had emerged. Like that was the very beginning of my personal development awakening, and it unleashed a monster, right? Which created the guy that I am here today. That was the first. And I want to run you through a series of others that started to revolutionize my life. Back in 2015, I decided to launch my first website. Back in 2016, then these were getting increasingly bigger. I said, I'm going to leave my 15-year corporate career and do a 90-day radical sabbatical around the world. Going into 2017, my big, bold move was, I'm going to write and publish my first book, which was Design Your Future. That ended up happening. 2018, I said, I'm going to land my first TEDx talk, which is what I was able to do. And so over this process, I looked back and I was like, whoa, I've done some pretty cool things, some pretty big things by simply committing to one big, bold move. And I discovered a secret throughout that process. And the secret is simple. New Year's resolutions are a drag, right? They're rooted in an obligation, but one bold move is an adventure. And it's the difference between doing something from a place of, I should do that thing, which is heavy and weighty, versus feel a spark, a sense of aliveness in this thing. And it gives me that kid at my birthday type of excitement, and maybe even a little bit of throw up in my mouth because the idea of writing a book or getting on a TEDx stage, it is an edge. But those are the things that ultimately ended up creating a really adventurous year, and then stacked up year over year, it started to change the course of my life.
Dominic, question for you. So the word should is a swear word, at least for today's podcast, is a 6-letter swear word. I've done everything I can to pull that out of my life completely. Because every time I use the word should, I can feel my energy drop. Oh, I should have done that. I wish I would have done it. Get it out of here, right? Shoulds are gone. You mentioned a few of your bold moves that you've made over the years. Some of those I noticed are items that are completely in your control, right? It's in your control if you're going to write a book. Huge accomplishment, right? But it's in your control. But other things, like I'm going to get on a TEDx stage, that's not necessarily in your control. So what is it when we're looking and thinking about these bold moves? Are these things that we should have control over, or maybe not?
You use that word should there. And even
I did
in the description. Yeah. So the idea is to go after anything that provides you a spark, right? And the spark is, there's something here that makes me feel like I'm leaning out over my edge. It feels like it's taking me to my next level. And that's the first step of this 3-step process. And we're going to talk about what this means in a minute. There's a next level area in your life that's calling for you to show up in a bigger way. And, when you talk about this TEDx talk, you're right. Like, you don't always have total control over, am I going to get picked for a stage? But I can do everything that's within my realm of reason, within my possibility, with that, being creative and putting all the energy out there that can put me in the best position to secure that talk. And so I measured myself for that particular one. I measured myself in terms of the actions taken versus the outcome. It just so happened I got the outcome I wanted.
Magic.
Cool. So really, the framework for this discussion today is that there's 3 steps that you're going to take to eventually end up identifying your bold move for the year. And what I want you to understand is your bold move really does have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's something that's finite, something that you can say, I either accomplished it or I didn't. I did it or I didn't do it. And it's a very clear line of demarcation, right? So if you think about those examples that I gave, I signed up for a personal development workshop and I saw it through. I wrote and published a book. I left a 15-year corporate career. I went a 90-day sabbatical. I decided to go after a TEDx talk. I got the TEDx talk. More importantly, I did all the actions necessary to put myself in position to secure one. So your bold move is going to be something that you can unequivocally say either you did or you didn't do. The 3 steps to finding that are, and these are going to be the agenda for our discussion. Number 1, identify the area of your life that's ready to be taken to the next level. We'll go into deeper detail on that in step 1. Step 2 is identifying the standout moments from this previous year. Every year we do this Design Your Future, we always take a look back to the year that you had. And we want to look back at this previous year to start to find those standout moments that gave you a spark, that allow you to feel what it's like to say, oh, that's invigorating. I want more of that, because that feeling will give you clues to step number 3, which is generating bold move ideas for the year ahead and picking the one that lights your fire. Okay. Those are the 3 steps. So is that feeling pretty clear to you, Bri?
Clear. It's exactly what we should do.
All right. Let's go into step number 1, which is your next level. And here's a little something that I wrote one day that I ended up putting out on the socials. I read it out at our masterclass that I ran on this very topic. And here's what it says. You don't always get to choose when your next level comes calling. It's almost always before you're ready. It's almost always inconvenient, and it almost always asks something scary of you. But when that next level comes calling, it sounds the alarm. You might want to resist, you might want to hide, but whatever you do, answer the call. What we're saying here is you already know that there's an area of your life that wants you to level up, right? And every guy kind of knows, you know what level you're currently at, right? Whether it's in your income, in your relationship, in your physical health, in your diet, in your emotional well-being, you have a good sense of where your current level is. The next level that's calling is where you want to be. It represents that next step up. But oftentimes what exists between the current level of where you are and the next level is what I like to call the comfort ceiling, right? There's something that's keeping you in place because maybe you're attached to your routines, to your habits, or to the comfortable lifestyle. Maybe you're drifting. Maybe you're lone wolfing. These are all the things that are standing in the way of you ascending to that next level of your life. And I'll pause here, Bri, to see if anything's coming, if there's anything here that requires further explanation or if there's something that's coming alive for you.
When I went through this exercise, there was 2 things that came up for me to help identify what is that next level. Like, what is that calling that I feel is really, really coming at me? And one was, I said on the positive side, was like, what do I enjoy doing? We'll go through some exercises here to help identify that. Like, what do I enjoy? On the flip side, it was, what frustrates the hell out of me? Like, what is it in my life that I'm doing that's like not working, that it would change me, it would level me up if I could just flow through those parts of life. So for me, I looked at the intersection of like, what do I really enjoy doing? What's the friction to doing that, right? That's the frustration, and moving on from there. So all the baseline work that we've done in this podcast and the masterminds and the master classes about understanding our emotion right? Helps identify some of the stuff we're talking about today.
Exactly. And to get really specific, a few years ago for me, I remember one of the next level areas of my life was around romance and intimacy. Most of our listeners know that I have a history rooted in sex addiction. I spent 4 years there in sex addiction recovery. And in the years that followed, I started finding my heart was opening. I started finding that this craving, this longing to bring more intimacy, closeness into the relationships in my life. So we ended up doing a discerning dick talk here in the city where we said, if next year was going to be the best year of your love and relationship life, what would it look like? And so for me, I remember going into the year, I think it was 2019, my bold move was to invest in love, relationship, and intimacy coaching. That's how I ended up finding John Wineland and signed up for that 9-month relationship intimacy course with it. That was my bold move for 2019. What we want you to get specific on in your life is, what is that area that's calling for that next level? And for me this year, it's about how do we take this work that we know has worked with the podcast, with the 3 masterminds, how do we take that global? That is what's been calling me. And I will break that down over the course of this conversation today to show you how that filters into my bold move for next year.
That's bold.
That's a big bold move. Yeah.
Worldwide men's work. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the next level. And then we want to get specific on what is the bold move. And I'll share with you what that is. You guys have already heard me talk about it for many podcasts, but now you'll get to see where it all fits into the puzzle. So if you're somewhat grasping this concept of next level, but you could use more focus, here are 5 signs that your next level is calling. Sign number 1, you feel a pull in your life towards something more. Maybe it's in the professional workspace. You're like, I need that next promotion. Or maybe it's, if you're an entrepreneur, my business, needs to take that next level and charging my clients more. I need to open up and expand a new market. You feel a pull towards something more. Where's that happening in your life? Number 2, what once lit your fire no longer interests you. And Brian, I'm going to come to you in a second on this one to see if there's anything personal in your life around this one. But, for me, when I was in the corporate space working for Prudential, there was a period of time where all I wanted to be was a salesperson. I wanted the thrill of the hunt, the kill, the commission, being someone in the organization that had a job that people looked up to. And for years, that was like the thing that fulfilled me. And then all of a sudden, one day, it just stopped being the thing that no longer lit my fire. And that required me then to kind of look at, well, then what's that next level? And in that arena, it was, moving up into becoming a leader for the first time in my professional career. So can you relate to anything where something was once your fire that no longer lights it?
For sure. I think coming into 2020, I had a bold move and something I wanted to prove to myself. I wanted to prove to myself that I could build a product that was both profitable and had a great team behind it. So I did that and I accomplished that, and that felt great. And it also feels in this current moment like, okay, like what's next? The calling that you're talking about, that leveling up, it's in this instance really clear, because just operating from where I'm at today doesn't light my fire up.
And what's important to note about that, many of us can process that as a failure, like something's wrong. Oh my gosh, I've fallen out of love with this business. There's something wrong with me and I should be grateful. I've made it successful. This is the thing I said I wanted. And what we're asking you to do is reframe that. If it no longer lights your fire, it simply means that has fulfilled its purpose. And actually a new layer of the onion is like that has folded off, and you're getting even closer to the next thing that's really lighting your fire. So to be able to let those things go, David Deida talks about this in The Way of the Superior Man. It's not to process these things that once lit your fire that no longer do as a failure, but that it is a rising up. Something else is asking for your attention. It's typically closer to your purpose. 3 more signs that your next level are calling. You feel restless and unsatisfied with a part of your life, right? Like there's something more. Number 4, you feel a burning desire to realize more of your potential. This is a big one. A lot of guys feel this thing of like, I know I'm leaving chips on the table. I know I could be doing more. I know I could be doing bigger or better. I know that I can be giving more of myself, but I don't even know what that is. It's kind of like this nebulous feeling. You got to listen to that and get really curious about what that is, because you will be directed and guided. We're going to give you some ideas on how to start to listen to that differently as we go through the course of this conversation. And the fifth and final sign, and maybe I'll come back to you on this one, Brad, to see if you can relate to this one at all. You have recurring dreams about something that just won't subside, right? And it maybe doesn't even make sense to you. It's like, I bet you I know what yours is, because like you fell in love with woodworking and it's always been something that you've loved to do, but like you've really invested in this over the last like year. I just love working, like woodworking and building and doing things with and it has no quote practical application to the money that you're making right now and the business that you've structured in certain ways that you've structured your life, but this thing won't go away. Like, how are you processing that right now in the context of, hey, there's a next level that's calling for you, bud?
You said the word dream. And there are certainly dreams that happen related to, you mentioned woodworking, right? I call it building. But it's not just dreams. It's where does my mind go when I'm meditating? Where does my mind go when I'm actually doing woodworking or I'm cleaning the dishes, or what comes up in conversations with Beck and I? And so there's all of these little clues that sometimes don't make sense. And even before we started this podcast, I said, Doc, I got to talk because like, there's something that doesn't make any sense, but I feel a strong desire for it. And so what more specifically has been coming up for me is that I have learned over the past 2 years of building this company, I have a passion for building a product. I love building a space, in this case, a digital space where people come into it, they experience something new, and there's some sort of value provided. I also have that same desire, and I didn't know this, about physical space, about building structures, building physical spaces for people to gather around, be part of, or anything else. And so the thing that makes no sense, right, is I have no background in building or woodworking, but man, like when I look at Instagram, when I'm looking at YouTube, I can tell you, look at my history, these are the things that I have interest in. And I have to just be okay with that because it was so easy to be like, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. But it kept coming back.
Yes. And you have to listen to that because we're not saying right now that you have to throw everything away to start building boxes or tables, out of your garage. But it is asking you to take a deeper look at it to say, what is that next level of investment in this thing that clearly you can get lost and absorbed in for 13 hours without going to the bathroom or eating. And Mark Manson always talks about this. If you're trying to find your purpose, one of the questions to answer is, what do you do that makes you forget to eat and poop?
Right.
and
Very clear.
Working for you is that
totally
right?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. It also makes me scream and swear sometimes. It makes me say the word should every once in a while, but it's all part of the process.
Yeah. So as you're listening to this, what are those things that just won't go away, even if they seem nonsensical? If you were to pay attention to them, like what is that next level that they're requiring you to take a look at? So the takeaway from this section number 1 is identify the area of your life that is asking for you to rise up. Romance, intimacy, finances, physical well-being, mental well-being, you name it, adventure, skill acquisition, write that down. Because eventually we're going to pick a bold move that is going to help you catapult yourself from where you are currently up to that next level. Part number 2 here is one of our favorite parts of this design your next year of your life process. We've always loved this idea of looking back at the year we just had. So part number 2 is identifying your standout moments from 2021. And Maya Angelou, we always quote her every year in this section, is you can't really know where you're going until you know where you have been. And we are always racing so quickly into the future. We're always crushing a goal and immediately thinking about the next goal, or climbing a mountain and immediately thinking about what's the next mountain we need to climb, that we forget to actually do an inventory of where we've been. And when you do, you start to realize, wow, I've been to some places. I've had some experiences that I completely forgot about because I didn't even take a minute to reflect about them. So we're going to give you one very simple exercise that I've been doing for the last 5 or 6 years that's been super rewarding. And it's called the Year in Review in Pictures. So what I want you to do is pull out your phone, and I want you to scroll back to January 1st of 2021. This is a 10-minute exercise. And I want you to scroll through all of your pictures, all of your videos from this past year. And as you go through and you see something that kind of sparks your interest, like a trip you took, a family photo you took, maybe a selfie, maybe a place that you're at, a moment that captured your heart, a concert that you went to, a party that you were at, an accomplishment of some kind, at the gym, whatever. Take screenshots as you scroll through, screenshots of those moments. And what you will start to accumulate is a series of maybe 20 to 50, whatever gives you a spark, of these pictures. And what I love to do is I love to assemble them into a PowerPoint presentation broken down by month. And when I did the masterclass, right, for Design Your Future on this very topic, I shared with you guys, these pictures, and I'll just run through it quickly because you can't see them, obviously, listening to a podcast. But back in January, I had these beautiful pictures of me starting off the new year in Sequoia National Park, right? These glorious, majestic trees, some of whom have been around longer than Jesus, like they're 2,300 years old.
Wild reference there. Longer than Jesus. Isn't
that amazing? Thinking about that. We're in the year 2021. Some of these trees have been around for like 2,200 years. And I'm standing there like that tree is older than Jesus.
That's amazing. Did somebody tell you, hey, this tree has been here longer than Jesus? Or is that just something that popped in your mind?
When I saw that it's been around for 2,200 years, I'm like, that's BC, before Christ. So that just helps put into perspective. Whoa. And looking at those pictures, it took me back to being there. And I hadn't really spent a lot of time reflecting on that. In February, we'd launched the Digital Mastermind. In March, I saw pictures of my family selling our house that I grew up in, that we had for 35 years, and just the emotions that came up with that. April, I saw some pictures that I was reflecting on when I broke up with the woman I'd been dating at that time. And, just kind of fast forwarding through the year, we had our first immersion back in May with our Mastermind 1.0 after 420 days of Zoom. I went down to Costa Rica with a group of military vets in June, to help them process PTSD with ayahuasca. In June of 2021, we launched Mastermind 2.0. These were some big macro moments from the year that as I was going through it, my heart was swelling. So those were the macro moments, but I also encourage you to look for those micro moments, like smaller things that also provide a spark. And some of the things that came up for me on those micro moments were, helping Robert, one of the men in our mastermind, go pick out his dog, Henry. And I was there for him. And Henry's now had for 3 or 4 months. And it's like, this dog is beloved by everyone who touches and sees this guy. I was there for him picking that out. I also borrowed my friend's toy poodle for a weekend. I have pictures of Jelly living in my house, which was a great experience. I love the dog, but it also taught me I don't want to own a dog. I'd rather borrow yours and give it back. So there were so many of these micro moments, the books that I read, the people who I hung out with, the dance parties I went to, that was just okay. It got me into the energy of, this is what I want more of. I want to feel more of this, which helps me to then, when it comes to this exercise of generating bold move ideas, helps me hone in on a feeling versus a should. The look back provides the feeling. You went through this exercise, man. I'm kind of curious what came up for you.
I did go through this exercise, and there were a few themes that came up for me on the big scale. The first one is around home. We were in Brooklyn. We moved to Philadelphia. We bought a place here. And when I look through the year, there have been so many experiences either during the moving out of Brooklyn, or really started to make this place in Philadelphia home. So I've got a lot of my green garage floor photos. One of my favorite things is I'll go down there and start working, and then Becca will come down and sit in the back of the Jeep or on the floor while I'm working in there, and she'll just read a book. And so it's kind of cool. We're doing a little something together. So home was really the first theme. The second theme was relationship. And Becca and I, as most listeners know, we got engaged in April, and that brought a really great community of people together. So relationship with Becca and moving through this engagement period into wedding planning, and relationship with all those people, because you mentioned the immersion in May back in Austin, Texas. And that was the first time that we got together with the guys that we've been with over Zoom for over a year. And so this idea of community, I didn't realize how much I missed being in community, in person with people.
Yes.
And that one was absolutely huge. In some of the micro moments, we got pets earlier in the year. Yeah. Dominic didn't get the dog. He borrowed dog, but didn't own one, right? We did get pets. That didn't work out for us.
Sugar gliders?
Sugar gliders. Yeah, I don't recommend them as pets, and we probably should have known that prior to going down that path. But hey, there we are. But it did teach Becca and I a lesson of we can adjust, we can make different decisions. So yeah, man, I think really home and relationships have been two of the huge themes, and then the sub stories underneath them is what led me to my bold move.
Cool. Okay, then let's transition to the third section here so that we can show how all of this ties together. The third section now is identifying your bold move. And what we have found, what I have found, in going through this process over the last decade or so, the best way to hone in on your bold move is to generate an abundance of ideas and then to feel into which one lights your soul on fire or which one makes your balls tingle. Like one of those things that we like to say that provides the spark. For me, like I said earlier, the next level that was calling was taking this work that we have been doing that has been working extraordinarily, right? We've got Mastermind 1.0, Mastermind 2.0, the digital mastermind, all which have now been in work for at least a year, up to 2 years. And the men's lives are revolutionizing. They're all changing, all upgrading. We know that the formula that we are putting into place works. The next level that's calling is to bring this to more men on a global basis. Okay, now that I know that's my next level, to bring it bigger, to scale it, to get it out there, to attract more men. Now I write down 10 possible ideas or more. Okay, so some of my ideas that I came up with were maybe we invest in this podcast and, put some money behind it and advertise and get that out to more people. That's an idea. Maybe launch another 1 or 2 masterminds. That's an idea. Maybe train up a couple of our leaders to run their own masterminds so they can oversee and scale that. That's another idea. Maybe I go and land another TEDx talk. That's an idea. But then this one idea came that really lit me up, and it said, create a challenge for men that could go through a challenge in a period of time and get a taste of the work that we do here. And all of a sudden, boom, I felt that spark, like the electricity came up inside of me. And that's where the 100 push-up challenge that I've been promoting on the show for the past number of weeks, probably a month or so now, came into fruition, was to say, if we were to launch a global challenge for men to go through over a 60-day period of time, to get a flavor for how we bring the body, the mind, the soul together, Trojan horse, mindfulness, meditation, inner work, community, stop lone wolfing, it brings all the best elements together in a concentrated period of time where men get a real flavor for what we do and experience what we do. And if we were to go big and get maybe hundreds or even a couple thousand men involved in this, then that would be a thing that I can hang my hat on for the year 2022. This community could hang her hat on. And we ended up launching that challenge earlier this week. We were hoping to get 500 total men over the course of, the next month or so. We got 275 men who registered in the first week alone. And we haven't even put on a full marketing blitz yet. This is going to be something that's huge. So this is the bold move that by hell or by high water, I'm making sure that happens. That is absolutely contributing to that next level. And that's how, and by the way that looking at my year of 2021, how that played in, the biggest theme was I had gazillions of pictures of me with men and masterminds and going on these guys' adventure trips. And my heart just exploded every time I saw these pictures. I'm like, more guys need to be a part of this. That's what allowed me to pick this challenge and put it into action.
I'm so glad that this episode isn't a solo episode, Dom, because an encouragement that I have for every guy that's thinking about all the different bold moves that could be for 2022, my encouragement is do that homework, write it down, think about it, sure, and then get with another guy. Yes. Talk to them about these different ideas, because the energy level that I just saw in Dominic as he was talking about these other ideas, podcast ideas, launching new masterminds, they're all within the ethos of what Dominic's doing and how he could reach this worldwide group of men, right? But as he started talking about the push-up challenge, his arms went up, his face lit up, his speed got a little quicker as he was talking, right? And it's so hard to see yourself doing that. So my encouragement is to have this conversation with another guy, because they will be able to point it out clear as day that like, that's the thing. That's where the energy's at. So do it together. Now, when Dominic ran the masterclass for this a couple weeks ago, he had us break out into groups of 3, run through the list, and the same thing happened. It was so obvious. Even if it wasn't obvious for the guy, it was obvious for the 2 other people that were witnessing him talk through it. Yeah. So that also happened to me.
Let's hear it.
As we started talking through these bold moves and looking at the past and home and relationship and how does this all play together, so I certainly had a few ideas. The theme around this was to build. And what does build mean, right? It means what I said before. It is building a home, a digital home for men. It's also about building a physical home for men. There were a lot of ideas around that. There was a nonprofit that I was thinking about getting involved with related to homelessness and how do we build structures and economic structures for that in some given cities. So that's a really cool thing. One of my beliefs is like, if you don't have a home, it's really hard to do anything else. It's really hard to have any kind of baseline at all. So that part of that thing really lit me up. There was some ideas around building out my team at work to a higher level, to have me start to step out of that role and to really bring some people in. And so it was all about how to identify the right people to bring in to take over some of these tasks. But that also felt small. It felt like not important, but not big enough. It didn't really light me up. When I started to think about some of the frustrations that I've had with building, it's often to do without a skill set. So I don't have the skills in order to build the things I want to build. And so what I landed on eventually, and as I started talking about this with people, they pointed at me and said, that's the thing, is to go get educated and build the skills in these areas. And so I'm taking 2 steps really specifically in that area. I will become a licensed architect, even though it feels scary and dumb and stupid because I'm 41 years old. And usually you start a process like this at 23 or so. It'll be a 5-6 year process, right? This is not a short sort of thing. Yeah. So there's that. And I've already started down that road. 2 is around product development in the digital space. So just like I'm building the skills on the physical side, I'm going to be building the skills on the digital side so that I can create both of these things. And that lights me up. When I think about the skill building part of it, I'm excited about it. Whenever I thought about a master's program, right, like an MBA or something like that, I like the idea of the outcome. Okay, I've got an MBA, I put it on the wall, I put it on my resume, I'm safe, I know more stuff, I went to a good school, yay, right? But the process, the journey through getting an MBA sounded boring as shit for me.
Yeah.
When I think about this journey, this 5-6 year journey, doesn't scare me at all. When I think about being 46, 47 years old by the time that this thing's actually over and I can actually be a licensed architect, for example, doesn't scare me at all. Because if I spent the next 40, 50 years of my life doing this thing, building, I am jazzed about that. So like, bring on the journey.
Wow, man, that's so exciting to hear you say that you committed to that. Because I know in our men's group the other day, you were talking about like, I have this gnawing thing at like coming at me like, I want to become a licensed architect. But one of your holdbacks was, but I'm 41. This is something you do when you're 23. And then you said, I want to be doing this until I'm 90. And I think it was Matt Hunter who was like, dude, that's a 50-year career you're talking about. You know, like 41 to 90 is a 50-year career. That's forever.
And I want to talk about why these bold moves are so important and not just for 2022. Stephen Pressfield wrote a book called Turning Pro, which we've referenced during this series of podcasts about designing our life.
Yep.
And he talks about turning pro. And once you decide to go pro, it changes everything in your life. And so when I decided to do this, when I decided that I want to be an architect, I want to be building physical things and digital things into my 90s. What does that mean? That means I have to have mental dexterity. That means my fingers need to be able to work. I need to be able to carry things. My body needs to be strong. And it's been amazing, Dominic, since that masterclass and I made that decision, even though I hadn't decided on a school or anything else like that yet, I knew in my mind I had to go pro. Because if I'm going to obtain that sort of dexterity to work into my 90s, then I need to start now with my sleep habits, my eat habits.
Yes.
And what used to be a should, oh, I should, or I shouldn't eat that, or I should go to the gym, became a, of course.
Of course, right.
Of course I'm going to do that, because how else am I going to be designing into my 90s?
Beautiful.
I have to, and I'm excited about that. So like this bold move of 2022 isn't just about 2022 for me. It's an exciting life change that doesn't feel like it should.
Dude, I love how you tied all of the stuff that we've been talking about together. And what's really interesting is that now I'm having a chance to talk to some of the men who I spoke to a year ago, who kind of got close to maybe joining one of the masterminds and, the things that they've wanted to do in their lives. Now I'm checking in with them a year later. Some of the guys who didn't join, right? And didn't make the bold move, didn't turn pro. And I've checked in with them and not much in their lives have changed. And that's not a judgment that I certainly know I've been in that place in my life as well, where I'm like, oh, these things I say I want, and I don't take the action because of fear, or it's inconvenient or it's whatever. And then a year goes by and nothing much has changed. And it's like, ah. And so that's why earlier on we say, you don't get to choose when the next level comes calling, right? It comes calling on you now, and it won't leave you alone, like this thing for developing your craftsmanship, but you have chosen to listen to it. You have chosen to sit with it, create space for it. You have chosen to speak about it and unravel some of the fears and the things that were holding you back. And now you're ready to step forward into this bold move that, as I hear you talk about it, but just to reflect back to our listeners who can't see Brian, your face lit up like a Christmas tree. Your eyes got bigger. I'm sure there's some trepidation in there somewhere, but this idea of going on this multi-year journey to getting your architecture license, to be a licensed architect, but then opening up decades of adventure in building. Like you have just signed up for a lifetime in adventure in building that I can see it's resonating in your face of like, oh my gosh, that's exactly the kind of future I want to be living into. That's how all this stuff works. That's how it all ties together.
I'm just giddy. Yes. Let's go.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I do a quick envisioning of these two bold moves coming together?
Please.
We are in the year 2025. We're on Robert's Land, upstate New York. We've all been connecting over Zoom and connecting over an app. People are making these little micro movements, right? And then we've 10,000 men descend on Robert's Land into a house I designed and that we all built together. And we all rock out 100 pushups at the exact same time around a giant bonfire, screaming wild man shit. That's the vision.
You think we're joking, but that's closer to reality than I think either one of us realize right now. It's actually funny you say this because a year ago, Robert, who's one of the men in our mastermind, had envisioned during one of these processes buying land. It was a meditation process. We're like, what do you see on your land? He said, I see a big A-frame. I see a bonfire, and we're doing men's work. And we're like, who's there? He's like, what celebrity's there? He goes, The Rock. And we all were like, yeah. So, you fast forward a number of months, Robert buys the freaking land. He has the land. Fast forward to now, an A-frame is being built on that land, So this is all happening. This stuff is not just theory. It's actually happening. And so what we want for you guys who are listening, and please don't be intimidated by the size of, some of these things that we're talking about. Remember, my first step started with signing up for a weekend retreat that went into a 10-week program. Some of the people who came to the masterclass are talking about maybe writing a children's book or writing a screenplay or getting their first paid professional speaking gig, selling their first commercial real estate property, getting a real estate license. Whatever that thing is for you that pushes you to your edge, that kid at your birthday type of excitement when you think about moving towards it, maybe a little bit of throw up in your mouth. That's the thing that we're looking for. So the 3 steps to this process of identifying your bold move. Number 1, identify the next level area of your life that's calling you forward. Number 2, do that look back exercise. Go back to January 1st of this year, go through all of your pictures, look for standout moments, micro moments, macro moments. You can also look through your calendar and look at all the events, all the places that you've been, who you did it with. Look at your bookshelf, the books that you read, those kinds of things. Look at your journals. If you're someone who journals, go through the journal entries. Those are great ways to look at where you've been in the year 2021. Find the things that spark you. Carry that energy into this last step, which is step number 3 of generating bold move ideas that can help catapult you from where you currently are to that next level step of where you want to go, and then pick the one idea that lights your soul on fire. When you figure out what that bold move is, please come into the Facebook group, the Great Man Within Facebook group, which I link in the show notes every episode, and let us know what it is that you're working on so you can have that public accountability of declaring it for us to see you. So y'all heard that my bold move for 2022 is this global 100 Great Push-Up Challenge to teach you how to do 100 push-ups in a row over a 60-day period starting January 1st to March 1st with hundreds of men around the world. And like I said earlier, 250 men registered for this in the first 5 days of it going live. So this is something clearly our community is enthusiastic about, and harnessing mindset technique, overcoming your inner critic, breath work and meditation, small accountability groups to stop lone wolfing, to help you shatter your perceived limits of what you think is possible. Please register in the show notes. Join this journey that we're going to be going on for 60 days together. We've already got men who are establishing small group teams, coming up with team names, already starting to do push-ups. It's going to be awesome, and we're kicking off on January 1st. So in the show notes, get yourself registered, and we'll see you on the path.